All right. Thanks for being here today. This is Riley McClellan, and we used
Hi.
to work together in a stock department of a furniture store. I left that a few months ago. If you're still there, I hope things are going well. And if you're not still there, I hope things are still going well. Um, in that time, we had some past conversations about art and the kind of art you do and create and your ideas about it. And that's why we're here today, is to talk about that, but we can talk about other things too. And how are you, and what occupies most of your time these days?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm still working in the stock room, just part time, but still trying to get out there with the markets. And I got a lot of ideas brewing for art. I just haven't put them to paper yet. But yeah, I've been good. Just slowly trying to get things together.
Okay. And in your creation of art, how did that start for you? Like, when did you decide that that's going to be a thing you're going to do?
It really sparked my interest in high school when I like actually started learning about like techniques and like just I guess like real art you would call it. I've always been creative and like drawing. I wanted to be like a fashion designer when I was younger. So I always like knew I wanted to do something creative, but high school when I really started to learn how to do it was really where it started.
What kind of art were you doing then?
Just like basic, like still lives and, just learning the fundamentals of art. Um, I did a lot of things like referencing poems or like, just, yeah, like other things that I was like learning about in high school.
Okay. When you, what were your biggest influences? Was it just the high school stuff, or when you were getting into it, how did you kind of narrow down what type of stuff you were going to do, or did you not narrow it down?
I didn't narrow it down in high school. In college, I started to narrow it down to like what you see I do now, like the portraiture. But in high school, I was like just doing whatever assignment they threw at me. So
I remember art class in high school. It might have been intermediate school too, where the art teacher would, you'd finish the picture, and then the art teacher would say, "Look, you got a lot of space up here, and you fill up
mm-hmm.
that space." So,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of what's your the biggest thing you've learned along the way of creating art that you would give? What advice would you give to a beginning artist of how to create?
Yeah, for all art, or any practice, music, what any creative, I would say, patience is the biggest thing. Because you're constantly seeing, people's bests in any, form, but just having patience with yourself and knowing that as long as you keep at it and if you're diligent, you're going to get better. If you create your first work of art and it doesn't look very good, that's because you've never done it before. But as long as you keep doing it, it's going to get better. There's just no other way.
Okay. What art school did you go to?
I went to school in Arizona. The university is called Northern Arizona University, and I got a studio art degree.
Okay. What's that mean?
So that means like I had classes in multiple forms of art. So my emphasis was painting, but I also learned like printmaking and ceramics as the other like forms of studio art.
So then now the portrait portraiture, is that how you call it? What'd you call it?
Portraiture,
Portraiture.
yeah,
Is that
or
what you're
portraits.
main is that what you're mainly doing now then, or is that what you're only doing now?
It's what I mainly do, but I love like whimsical art, like whatever interests me at the time, I'll go for. I'm like, anything I can get my hands on, I'll I'll try.
What kind of like when you're thinking about what you're going to make, how do you go about that process? What's your first thought on a piece, and then how do you carry that to being finished?
Yeah. Well, usually, like for my portraiture, let's say, I'm inspired by like photography or like models that I see, and that's what sparks it. And going from there, I try to, think about the emotion that I want to convey or just the mood of the painting. And that's where I kind of reference my colors. But for like other subjects of mine, I start with an idea. I'll take notes on like what I'm trying to like. Really, for me, it just is like what I'm trying to say or what I'm trying to convey or like give emotionally for the painting is where it starts. And then at that point, it's gathering reference photos or sketching in order to kind of make it come to life. And then I just keep, working on it until I feel like it's reached that point.
What what kind of space do you use when you, I guess you're doing mainly painting, but I think you also do prints and
Hmm.
carving or reliefs. What kind of space do you have
Yeah.
for that?
Well, the prints that I have, the relief prints and everything, those are from college. So that was in a print studio, you know, the college studio. Now, when I paint, I actually mostly paint sitting on the ground because I just have the most surface area that way, and it's just I don't know, just comfy for me, I guess.
So like sitting on the ground inside or sitting on the ground outside or both?
Inside,
Inside. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
What what kind of stuff do you paint on? Like what do you do you just do canvases, or is it paper, or what medium do you use?
Yeah, again, it's just whatever I could get my hands on, but mostly canvas, just store-bought canvas, but I also do like little watercolors that I'll have on the watercolor paper.
Okay. So then mainly are you doing watercolor, or do you do oil paints and things like that?
I would say it's split between the two. My favorite is oil painting, like that's the one I'm most passionate about, but watercolor is a lot more accessible. Doesn't take as long to set up. You don't need as many things. You can just do it on paper. So since it's so accessible, I like to use watercolor a lot too.
Okay. So then, can you walk through the process of when you come up with the idea, and like how long it takes you to go through your, and I guess it would be on an average because different works, but depending on the size or depends on the time, but how long from the initial idea to what steps do you go through to create it to when you get to the point where you think this is done? Can you walk us through
Yeah,
that?
I've always had this problem. I never like time or like pay attention to the time that it takes, which can be really hard for pricing your work because most
Mhm.
artists use that as a starting point for where to price it, like how long you took on it. So that I can't give a clear answer on, but like I start with the idea. I start with the sketch. I start with gathering reference photos, I should say, and then a sketch, which usually takes. I'm slow at sketching. I'm faster at painting than I am at sketching. So sketch usually takes me like an hour to 2 hours to get it to where I like it. And for that, I usually use like a grid or, again, just like try and do my best with the reference photo. Um, from there, I start, if it's an oil painting, I'm going to have multiple layers of paint. So I start with the first layer. Each layer probably takes, I mean, depending on the size of the painting, like 2 hours. Um, but if it's bigger, it takes more than that. But so yeah, I try to have at least 3 layers of paint, depending on the color, because some are more opaque than others. But so at least 3. Sometimes it's like 5 layers of one paint for oil, um, and then I usually start with like the figure and then go to the hair, um, since they'll be different colors. But yeah, so it can take a long time, and I'm just, like I said, I don't pay attention to the time because I'm like, I just get into it, and I can go really slow, um, just because I want it to look just right. So yeah, it's a bit of a process. You got to keep coming back to it. But like, again, for if I'm looking at the final piece and where I want it to be done, um, I make sure that it has like what I'm trying to convey. At least for me, I don't even mind if people interpret my art differently than how I meant it. Just for me personally, if it's conveying what I wanted it to feel, and then also just making sure that there's no like parts that stick out to me that don't look right. And then that's how I determine if it's finished or not.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great parts of art, whether no matter how you define art, it's that it can take on a life of its own, and
Mm-hmm.
it can mean something to you and something different to someone else. So even in like writing poetry, or I guess if you're writing a story, it's kind of plain. You've got some subtext, but you've got the basic story there. This is what I'm getting across, and there's the subtext. So in pictures, I guess there's also the subtext too, whether you're talking about like the painting of the Last Supper, and everybody likes to talk about, people leaning in, people leaning out. What did the painter mean when they were painting that? But is it is painting something you can leave and come back to, or once you mix those colors and everything, you have to use those up, or can you like paint the figure and then go do something else and come back and do the hair, or come back the next day and touch things up, or does it have to be all done while the paint's wet?
For me, I do it multiple days. Like
Okay.
sometimes, like a week later, I'll come back to it, because oils, they take a long time to dry, but also you can keep them longer if you put them in the freezer, actually. So I'll take my whole palette and I'll put it in my freezer so that I can
Okay.
come back like a week later and keep working on the same painting. So yeah, it'll take like, I have one painting that's this size, or this size, that took a full year because I just kept like, leaving and then coming back to it.
So how do you find out? I mean, is there ever a time when you're painting and you go, okay, I'm done, and then you look at it a month or so later and go, I'm not done? Or do you just say at that point, the work is the work?
I usually say at that point the work is the work because, mostly I don't want to put myself through through the turmoil of trying to, change everything. But yeah, no, there's like, what I was taught in school was that like a painting is never really finished because you can always, come back and change it and always, do something different with it. So
Hmm. What I find with writing is you can keep revising and keep revising until the point, I think you see it right when it's done and go, okay, that's it. Or you go, something's not quite right. You tweak a couple words, or you change a few things. And then you get so sick of it that you're like, okay, I've read this piece of work so many times. I'm done with it. Even then you can still go back and find little mistakes in it, whether it's you should put a comma there or not a comma, or something's wrong with the way the letter is, it should be uppercase or lowercase. Hopefully you cut down on those things with reading through it. But I do find it's either you know it when it's done, or you're just done with it, and then you let that just continue on.
Yeah. I feel like I get to that point. Like, it's just like, it's done. I can't look at this anymore.
Do you do commissioned work?
I don't really. I know that's a big, big way that a lot of artists, start out and they get their funding. But I've just always kind of struggled with it because again, because of the pricing, I don't time myself, and really just like, I feel like my style is not like compatible with what a lot of people want commissions of, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. There's a picture. I have a few I can put up here. Let's see. These are some that are on your Etsy page, and that'll be in the show comments if anybody wants to look at the links. But I think that the one on the bottom right, if you're looking at the screen, is like a hand reaching out into the woods. That's what I interpret it as. And I think that's a print from I guess you carved something there, or how do you make that part?
So they have a few different names. I just call them relief prints, because it's the surface level is where you're getting the relief word, but people call them reduction prints, block prints, lino cuts. They got all these names, but that one in particular was carved from a block of wood and then inked up. Like, after, like, everything that you see that's white there is the carving, and then it's inked up with ink and then printed using like an old school printing press, and that's how you create a full edition, is you do each one individually.
Okay, so the block that you're using to make the impression is the same. What makes it different is the thing you're printing it onto. And so that's the first print.
Yeah.
That's the second print. You're not changing the block.
No, you're not. You can if you want, but it's like an addition if you have the same exact block, but each one is printed individually. So they can have some little differences depending on like how much ink you used, or like, the pressure of the press. But yeah, they're part of a limited edition, because also, typically relief or printmakers in general destroy the block that they used after they create the edition. So it's never going to be printed again. That's why it's limited edition.
Oh, I'd sell the block too and say this is the block. And you could change it
some
somehow
people do that. Yeah,
or
some
just
people
keep it
do
just
that
for
still. Yeah, but I don't know. I just wanted to be traditional about it, so I destroyed all the blocks that I ever made prints of.
In that creative process then of I guess you go through the idea of this is what I'm going to carve into this piece of wood, and then you do the carving, and then do you still carry that creative process through when you're printing and you're like, I'm going to put 100 pounds of pressure on this one, and I'm going to do 200 pounds of pressure on this one, and then in your mind, are you still ticking away those little artistic things, or is it more of I'm just printing these, the art is done, and this is just showing what has been done already? How do you view that?
Yeah, for me, the when I'm actually printing them is more like mechanical than
Okay,
creative.
good way to explain
It's
it.
about it's about getting the ink just the right, texture, just the right softness. It's about getting the, press the amount, right amount for the print, and it's just making sure that, every single one looks how it's supposed to. At that point, I'm like, the creative process is done. But
Okay.
that being said, other artists will definitely like keep tweaking and, you know, playing with the color and, you know, keep going with the creative process.
Yeah, my dad did a lot of silk screening growing up for like school shirts and events, and I still have some of the thing. I remember him sitting at the table cutting out the designs with an X-Acto knife, and then I also remember later on doing the photo silk screen where you have to set it in the sun to get
Mhm.
the parts to wear away correctly, and you have to do it a certain amount of time. I always thought that was pretty cool that it's the light that's doing the work. But
Mhm.
I have some of his old, I guess, stencils or designs that he did for the t-shirts and things like that that I consider pretty artistic. But I remember growing up having the kitchen full of just shirts hung around from the print it and then hang it up, print it, hang it up. Have you
Mhm.
done a lot of have you done any silk screening with your print work or
No, that's
school or
one
anything
that
like
I
that?
didn't. They offered it in college, but that's one that I didn't get the chance to do. I wish I did it now because I that's like such a cool skill to have.
It's not too late.
But yeah,
It's not too late.
that's true. Yeah.
That along the lines of commissioned work and like the artistic process, I think I would find it harder if I'm not a painter, but I have had times in life where I get this picture in my mind and I'm like, oh, I need to draw that because that's coming from somewhere. Either it's a mix of experiences that somehow meet in my mind, or it's coming from somewhere else, putting this picture in my mind. How do you view to you where that creativity comes from?
How do I view where the creativity comes from?
Yeah. Like the
Um,
Romans would say genius is not a
mhm.
person. Like if you look at something and you go genius, that's not the origin of that as far as I know. It's it's not talking about that individual. It's referencing something outside of that individual that is working through them. It gets a little ethereal. But
Yeah.
do you ever feel that versus I took this picture and I like this scene, like I've captured this scene of something and now I'm going to paint it.
um, I guess for me, it's mostly ideas. I don't know if I feel that I get like an image that's shot into my head, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, maybe that makes me, you know, not as genius. but
No, I don't think that's the case. I think it's just different for different mediums, different people. But please
yeah,
continue with.
yeah. No, yeah, I think for me it's really again like just going back to what I want to convey. What a lot of like what I want to convey is like what I've experienced or what I've seen people experience. And so that's where it comes from. I guess that would be like external more than internal.
Yeah, I was thinking about it because I was like, I like to know what creative people where they think the creativity comes from, because
Hmm.
oftentimes when I'm writing, you can write something and you're like, okay, I'm going to write a poem about the 12th grade class when I'm an 11th grader to be put in the prom booklet. All right. So that's
Hmm.
pretty, you're looking for some sort of, you're trying to draw some creativity from somewhere, but I feel like a lot of that is just from your own mind. But then there are times now when I write poetry and I think, wow, that's from somewhere else. I'm a antenna or a filter or whatever for something else that's trying to get out. And whether this this is working through me or it's trying to explain something to me and I can't understand it all, but that the picture of the hand reaching into the woods reminds me a lot of the poetry I've done, which I view it as um, like another level of existence somewhere else that I'm not a part of, but I can like peek into. So it's like looking into the dark woods right there, and you're trying to either listen and hear, or you're trying to see, you're trying to understand. But that's not always when I write. That's not what I feel, but sometimes it is. So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting to see if I think it's different, different art, different times, different people. You're going to feel different things. But
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like I can have that experience, but usually it'll be like when I'm already painting. So, like, I don't know if you've ever heard of the flow state, but
yes,
like for me, that is where that comes from. But like, as far as like where my ideas come from, um, I guess it's more just the world around me than the world inside me, I guess.
that's good. So that's exciting then to know you can get in that flow of the writing. I mean, you can do that in a lot of things, I think, whether it's if you're running, you get into that flow. Oftentimes you get
Mhm.
it when you're driving and you just appear at the place that you're heading and you're like, oh no, I don't remember how I got here. You get into that highway
Mhm.
hypnosis. But when you're painting and you can feel you're in there, do you know how to get into it? Or is it something where you just show up and you're like, okay, I'm going to do these things and then hopefully I get drawn into it?
That's how it is for me. I hope that it happens. I think there's like certain things that can, influence it and kind of coax it, like listening to music, or like, you know, just setting up your area. But yeah, for me, I don't have like a certain way that I know for sure is gonna lead to it. I'm just like, I want to paint. Hopefully, it happens. Either way, I'll paint,
Nice. Yeah. It's that little, I guess you could call it a little bit of ritual where you start setting your things up and your mind is getting into that idea of, okay, I'm about to do this thing, and it recognizes it and it's like, okay, let's let's see what we can do. Definitely your mind is probably um, like it wants to be in that state. And like if you enjoy
Yeah.
it, and after you do that, do you stand back and look at it and go, ah, or is it, do you remember it the whole time, or do you just like you're in the grid of it and then you can step back and see the larger picture?
Yeah, I feel like, while it's happening, I'm just like in the zone, I guess. And then afterwards, I'm like, yeah, like kind of like how you're saying with the driving thing. It's like, whoa, how'd that happen? Like, okay, like that just came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Do you find that working in the stock room gives you time to think about art? Or uh,
um,
when I was in there, there were times where it was busy and you're just thinking about, okay, I got to get this out and do this the right way. But there are other times where I feel like you kind of get into the zone there. How about you?
yeah. I feel like I don't know. I'm never inspired in the stock room. Yeah, I think about a lot of things, but I don't usually think about my art when I'm,
Oh,
back there. Yeah.
wow. When you're making a box for a mirror that was returned so you can put it back into stock, you're not like, yes, I'm creating a protective layer for this
Nope.
for this something that some other artist made. Oh.
Nope. Usually, like, I'm like, I hope UPS doesn't throw this on the ground.
Oh.
That's all I'm thinking.
Have they hired more people there, or are y'all still down to two?
We hired one more. We hired Caitlin back. Did you ever work with Caitlin?
Maybe, but maybe there was a lot of Caitlins.
There was also three Caitlins. So
Yeah.
yeah, one of the Caitlins. She's back. I
Okay.
still think we need more people, but yeah, we have the three of us.
All right.
Yeah.
Part of the stuff we used to talk about is where you marketed your art. And I know you have the online presence. We'll certainly talk about that. But there's a art fair that's in downtown Jacksonville under a bridge. I called it a troll market but not because I think the people there are trolls, but just, when things are under the bridge, it's fun to associate it with trolls. Are you still doing that?
Yeah, I'm actually the way that they do it for new artists. I just applied this year. Is they didn't give me every single one that I wanted or applied for, so I'm waitlisted for the rest of the year. If someone, you know, can't make it, or they get space somehow, then they'll add me in. But yeah, I just did one on Saturday, so I want to do it next year too.
Is that every other week, or is it once a month, or how often do they do that?
They do it every Saturday,
Okay.
and then if you're a creator, you can apply for whichever Saturdays you want.
Do you have any other scheduled, or do you not know until close to the day of if you're on that wait list? Like, will
I
they
don't
try to
know,
get you?
yeah.
Hmm.
Usually it's like the same week, like Wednesday. They'll tell me that I'm approved for Saturday. Um, but yeah, I have one event on Friday, so in a couple days. I guess this will come out after. But I have one coming up for it's in Avondale, Amplified Avondale, and other than that, I don't have any right now like on the docket. But I'm hoping I can use that time to create more pieces for next year when I attend the Riverside Arts Market again.
Do you do just the portraitures there, or do you have other stuff that you've like
I
prints and things like
do,
that?
yeah, I do these guys, and then like what you see on the screen, I have some prints of my watercolor work. So mostly I have the relief prints and the watercolor and stickers and just like fun little stuff for kids.
Okay. Yeah, for people that are just listening, on the screen, there's a watercolor of some mushrooms and then some stickers. Those are just other like same watercolors, and you just make them into stickers, so prints on there, and
Yeah.
then the relief of the hand reaching into the forest. I think, is that what that is? Is that
Yes,
what
it
you
is.
intended that to be? Okay.
Yes. Absolutely.
What's the story behind that? How'd that come about? What do you
That
think it says? What's it saying to you?
the idea for it sparked out of like the assignment was to create value in um in your relief print, because this is when I was doing like introduction to relief printmaking. So it was just learning how to create value, and I was really like, like trees have like such a cool texture that like I'm sure I could do something cool with that. And our professor showed us examples of like that kind of stippling that you see there with the dots. Um, that was made with a screwdriver, just like um, hitting the block of wood. So really, it just came from the assignment of like value. But I was like, I want to do something that incorporates the texture of printmaking and the light and dark, because it's only black and white. So yeah, I was like dark forest background. And again, it's just like I like to leave it up to interpretation. Like I love your interpretation of it. Like that's so cool. Like reaching out and trying to get to that space. So yeah, it's like you can see it as reaching out or like running from, or however you interpret it. I'm up for it. I love it.
Yeah, I like it. It has depth to it. I was looking at an explanation of 3D photography and how you make it, where you have the foreground, midground, background, and I mean, it's got that there. You could definitely make that into a 3D picture easily, but it already looks like it has depth. I
Hmm.
I like that one. I will be purchasing one of those, and I'll send you a copy of the poem that one of the poems I have that talks about that woods. I did one book called Halfway Through Strangeness, and I think a lot of people look at it as strangeness being life and like being middle aged halfway through life. that's not a bad interpretation of it. I'm okay with it.
Mhm.
You know, I think you write those things and you put them out there, and then I try not to explain it so much because I don't want to mess up what other people think of it. But to me, the halfway through strangeness is that place of connection with something outside of you. And it's like the woods. Like, how far can you walk into the woods? You can walk
Mhm.
halfway, because then you're walking out the other end. So
Mhm.
you're halfway through, you're trying to get into that. So that, to me, really is a picture of searching through those woods. I like it.
Yeah,
What
that's awesome.
what do you feel when you sell a piece of work?
Usually I'm just excited. I feel like for me it's not necessarily about the selling, it's just about like people's reaction to my work. So like even if someone doesn't buy anything, but they like really take their time to look at my art, or like when a little kid walks by and they're just like, "Oh my god, look at these stickers." Like they're so excited. That is like where I feel the most like joy, and just like I feel appreciation for them appreciating my work. But like selling, I'm always excited. I'm always like a little nervous. I'm like, you know, don't try and return this. But yeah, really, it's people's reaction that mean even more to me than them actually buying it.
What keeps you? It's probably two different things here. What keeps you making art, and what keeps you going back to those markets and signing up for them and doing the internet presence of marketing your art online? What keeps you going in both of those pursuits?
Well, for me, what keeps me making art is I don't think I could stop. I don't think I could. I don't think I could not make art, because it just means so much to me, and it's like the flow state or whatever. It's such a release for me. It's such a, you know, just a way for me to express myself. So I don't think I could ever like stop making art, but um, so that's a big motivator for me, is like I just want to get me myself out there, or my thoughts out there, or even if no one else sees it, I just need to get it out of my brain. Um, so that's why I keep making art. But why I keep going to the market specifically is like I was just saying, I love to interact and see people seeing my art. I think art and all creative forms are just a way to connect people, and that's really important to me too. Is like I just feel like if we could all, express our creativity, we would all be so much more connected, and less angry at each other all the time. But
Yeah.
so I love just being part of the community in that way, and I love just showing my work, because I think like I said, I could create art forever and not show it to anyone, but I think showing it and being vulnerable is a way for us to connect to people. And then same with kind of the online. I'm just like trying to show my friends, or show whoever wants to see my work. I'm like, I'm so bad at like social media, so I'm like, I try.
You have some, like, it's Instagram, Facebook, Etsy, TikTok, and I'll put all those links down in the show notes for anybody that wants to see them. But what's the easiest way for people to see all? Do you have like one place where you have them all listed, like a website or anything like that?
um I don't. I need to make a website for like just having my portfolio that people can look through. But I'm most active on Instagram. Like I'm always like putting stories on my Instagram and everything. So I would say, if you want to see the most of my work, Instagram would be the way to go.
What's that Instagram at?
It's RileyMCC_art.
Okay. And again, that'll be in the show notes, but just for people that are listening, what is your 5-year plan? Not trying to sound like your parents, but what is, as far as art goes, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
um, it's hard. I feel like I'm still figuring it out. Um, I mean, my whole life out, really. Mid 20s, like, I don't know what I'm doing. But really, what is important to me is that I keep doing it and I don't let it go. So, you know, I don't know. I don't really have a 5-year plan.
Mm.
Because, oh, and it's mostly because I don't know what I want to do with my art. If I knew, like, I wanted to be in galleries, or like I wanted to, you know, have like an amazing website, or an online presence where I make all my sales and have a small business, and but I don't know. I feel like I could still find it, and I don't know exactly what it is yet.
Do you think you'll always do this type of art, or do you see it branching out into something else or doing something else, or are you already looking at other things?
Well, I started wood burning, so that's a different type of art. But I mean, I think I'll always do some form of portraiture because, like I said, I just love the emotion and the connection of it. But yeah, as far as like the medium, I'm I'm open to anything. It's hard because people like say you have to have a consistent style to grow your following. Like, people want to see a specific thing from you, right? And I'm like, I have any style, I'll just do anything.
Hmm. How long does it take for that art market for you to be considered a regular and not a new one? Because I think even when we were still working together, they were considering you new. That was a while ago. So
Yeah,
what do you got to do
yeah.
to not be new?
I think when I apply this year, I will be a veteran
Okay.
maker. It was just that I had never applied for it before, but the people that got approved in the last year they get to apply first and before they open it to the public. So I think that'll hopefully be enough to get me approved for the ones that I want next year.
We talked about this a little when we were working together as far as like ideas of things to paint or things to market at the art fair. And I was talking about like old cartoons,
Mm-hmm.
like Thundercats and Silverhawks. And have you looked at those yet? Have you done the research?
No, I have not.
No.
I'll be honest.
So you just gaff me off. Okay.
Sorry.
I'm not sure how copyright laws work, but I think you could get some interest. I mean, especially with stickers and things. Um, it sounds like you have a cat. So, I
Yeah.
mean, Thundercats is
Can
the
you
place to
hear
start. Yeah.
him? Yeah. He's meowing right now as you say that.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, there are families, and like there's just everyone comes to the market because you get food trucks, you got stuff for everyone. And so I think a lot of people could be walking by and not expect to see Thundercats or something like that, and be like, oh my gosh, like, I actually want to buy a piece of art here. you
Yeah.
know yeah.
That looks like the Thundercats playing poker, something like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll list your contact information and all that in the show notes. So if anybody wants to look at your creations and your art, they can. And hopefully that the art market, you can become a full-time, you know, it's a troll. I call it a troll, but that's not bad. It's not bad. Understand.
I know, I get
But
you.
embrace the troll market. Start painting some troll market type stuff, and maybe that'll help them. They'll think, oh yeah, we'll get this lady in here. She's doing Thundercats and Silverhawks, and she's marketing the trolls.
Oh my gosh. It would be so funny if they
I
like
think there's a
did
future in that. You could fit that into the 5-year plan somehow.
Maybe.
I appreciate you coming on and talking today. Is there anything else you think you need to add about art for me to think about?
I don't think so. Like I said, just patience. Any form of any form of creative outlet, just be patient with yourself and just keep working on it if you're passionate about it. It's hard not to compare ourselves, but just kind of trust in yourself and keep going with it. Like I always want to encourage people to express themselves in any way that they, without hurting other people or anything like that, but any form that they choose, music, writing, visual, representation, just expressing yourself is going to help you and the world. So.
Nice. All right. I appreciate you being here, and for everybody listening or watching, thank you. And we'll talk on the other side of this, because I need to find out how I can get something from Etsy if I'm not on Etsy, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks.